You heard Tom Bossert, the Homeland Security Advisor of the President, arguing that the President did condemn it. What do you think?
Well, this is not a time for vagaries. This isn't a time for innuendo or to allow room to be read between the lines. This is a time to lay blame on bigotry, to lay blame on white supremacists, on white nationalism, and on hatred. And that needs to be said. This president has done an incredible job of naming terrorism around the globe as evil, radical Islamic terrorism, whether it's in Europe or the Middle East. He has said and called it out time and time again, and this president needs to do exactly that today. Call this white supremacism, this white nationalism evil, and let the country hear it, let the world hear it. It's something that needs to come from the Oval Office, and this White House needs to do it today.
Some critics say that President Trump doesn't do this because he might believe that these white supremacists are a part of his base. Not obviously his entire base, but a part of his base, and he doesn't want to risk alienating them. What do you think? Why is the reason? What is the reason that he won't condemn them, call them domestic terrorists, call them white supremacists?
White nationalists, white supremacists, they're not a part of anybody's base. They're not a part of this country. They're a part of hatred, they're a part of bigotry, they're a part of evil, and we need to stand up to that. And so whether it's the President of the United States, a senator from any of our great 50 states around the country, or our city councils and mayors, school teachers, call it for what it is. It's hatred, it's bigotry. We don't want them in our base. They shouldn't be in a base. They shouldn't be claimed as part of a base, and it has to be made crystal clear.
Yeah, but why won't the President do that the way you just did?
Yeah. Well, again, I encourage the president to do that. This president has done so when people have driven trucks through crowds in Europe. He's called it radical Islamic terrorism. He should use this opportunity today to say this is terrorism, this is domestic terrorism, this is white nationalism, and it has to stop. And I encourage the president to do so. He has a chance to do that. The healing power of the White House, the ability to lead of the President of the United States, it needs to be seen today. Yes, he condemned bigotry and hatred, but we need to name evil and call evil and name it. And in this case, it is clearly bigotry, hatred, racism, and the white nationalists who led to death and murder in Charlottesville.
With respect, Senator, you're not answering my question. Why do you think he doesn't do it? I mean, is it sending a dog whistle? I mean, you heard me quote the neo-Nazi website to Tom Bossert earlier. There are neo-Nazis out there who say, oh, great, he wasn't condemning us specifically. Do you think that was the intention of the president?
I think the president needs to step up today and say what it is and call it for what it is. It's evil, it's white nationalism, it's bigotry, and it's unacceptable. And if he doesn't do that, then we can continue to answer the question of why. But I believe he has a chance to do that today. Ivanka called this white nationalism. She called it out today. The president needs to do so as well.
You were on the front end of Republican criticism of this yesterday, but I have to say, Donald Trump on this show, February 2016, refused to condemn or disavow in any way David Duke, the Klan, white supremacists. Are you really surprised that a year and a half later, his refusal to call out white supremacists is out there and it's an issue? I mean, it's the same thing he showed a year and a half ago on this show.
Well, I think that is why today the president needs to make it very clear, while calling out racism, while calling out bigotry, that he has a chance to show the American people who really is to blame for this. There is no sort of multi-dimensional facet to this evil. There's no sort of read between the lines moment that we have. The president needs to stand up and say, just as he has in places around the globe, this is domestic terrorism, it is unacceptable, and it was led by people who thrive on hate and thrive on racism, and it's unacceptable in the United States of America.
You're the chairman of the National Republican Senatorial Committee. That's the campaign arm of Senate Republicans. Do you want all Republican candidates around the country to join you in saying these were white supremacists and this was domestic terrorism?
Well, this isn't about Republicans or Democrats. This is about anybody with any common sense, decency, and dignity for human life and the values that we hold as a country, our constitutional rights. This is about Republicans, Democrats, Greens, anybody in between to say this is wrong. We don't stand for that. This country has made great mistakes in the past that led to a civil war. We've overcome them. We've apologized for them. And we should continue to do everything we can in our power to never let them happen again. And yes, there is pain that remains, and yes, there are great mistakes that we still make as a nation, but we cannot let them go unanswered, we can't let them go unlabeled, and we can't let them go unnoticed. We have to admit them, we have to make up for them, and then we have to do what is right. And that's what this country can do today, that's what the president can do today, and I would encourage him to do what he has done around the globe, calling out people for their acts of evil, Let's do it today. White nationalists, white supremacists, we will not stand for their racism, their bigotry, and their hatred.
On Saturday, President Trump said that we must all, quote, cherish our history. Tom Perriello is a former Democratic congressman from Charlottesville. He heard that as a dog whistle. He tweeted, quote, we must all cherish our history. Did Donald J. Trump just dog whistle support for the Klan's main goal of the hate rally, i.e. to protest the Lee statue, the statue of Robert E. Lee? Did you hear cherish our history as a dog whistle, Senator?
You know, I did not hear the statement, but what I will share with you is something that I read, reread for Marion Kanishi, who was a Japanese interned in Colorado, 18-year-old valedictorian of an internment camp in Colorado during a very dark time of our history when we took U.S. citizens and put them into internment camps. In her statement, in her valedictorian speech that she gave at this Colorado internment camp, she said, this is a country that has learned from its past and it has made up for those mistakes. And that's exactly what we have to do. We have to learn from our history. And we have to make sure that we look at those moments in history and say, yes, that happened in this country, but we can no longer allow it to happen. And I hope that's what he meant. I didn't hear that statement, but what we have to do in this country is recognize the mistakes of our past and that we as a great nation will learn from them and move on from them and not repeat them. It's Governor Chris Christie, who you cited earlier today, once said, it's hard to hate up close. And that's what we have to do in this nation. We have to realize that we cannot allow that hate to fester. It's hard to hate up close. Let's get to know our communities. Let's get to know one another. Let's get to know the issues that drive all of us. And then we can overcome this hate that seems to be festering right now and why this president needs to say, enough is enough. Hatred, racism will not be tolerated.